Previously on Maplestory the novel, Sacred Tears.
I didn't expect that it would cure the world.
Whatever this darkness was, it was countered by light.
What if the light is attracting the darkness, or suddenly back into place?
And now the continuation of Chapter 3, Part 2.
This outward light must be the path to the ultimate light. It has to be,
Dane said one evening as he and Menodora ate dinner.
I'm sure it is. But for now, sit down and enjoy the food. We won't be able to find this path if we can't even walk.
Menodora commanded jokingly, spooning out a large helping of potato salad onto her plate before reaching for the basket of bread. Dane smirked, staring at her and thinking over the day's observations. Menodora had taken a few moments to dance with children or watch as they fiddled with alchemic experiments. Her smile was infectiously radiant, and Dane soon realized that she was a source of outward-facing light. Menodora stopped when she noticed his stare, smiling awkwardly.
What? Is something stuck to my face?
She asked, instantly reaching for her napkin and wiping the sides of her mouth. Dane shook his head, fiddling with a fold of the tablecloth.
No. I was just thinking about the path we've taken up to this point. I don't ever remember seeing you this happy before, Menodora.
Dane smiled, chewing a large forkful of food.
To be honest, I'm a little surprised myself. It's been almost 3 years since we've been studying this together, and you've been studying for longer if I remember.
Menodora answered, taking another bite of her food.
8 years in all. It's hard to believe. I almost shudder to think about how dark this world would be without your existence.
Menodora lifted an eyebrow and tilted her head slightly.
What's this all about? Are you getting all philosophical?
She teased. Dane smiled and chuckled under his breath.
No, not in the strictest sense,
Dane replied, pausing for a long moment, staring at the woman sitting across the table from him, before reaching for her hand as a realization came to him.
So that's it. It's all so clear.
Dane almost whispered in awe.
What is?
Menodora asked, wiping her mouth and tightening her grip on his hand.
I've figured out what the ultimate light is.
He grinned, running his thumb over her fingers.
Well, don't leave me in the dark. What is it?
Menodora asked eagerly.
We are the ultimate light. I don't know how or when it happened, but you have sparked a new hour light within me. Together our light resonates and is made all the stronger. We, together, can be the cure for the world's darkness,
he answered, getting up from the table, not letting go of her hand and kneeling before her. Menodora took a moment to take in what she saw, his posture, his position. It made her stop and think harder before her eyes became wide with realization.
Will you be the ultimate light with me, Menodora Purnell?
Dane asked, reaching to his pocket and pulling from it a ring of moonstone and gold. Menodora nodded, unable to speak as the ring was slipped onto her finger, slimming down to the perfect size.
We still have a long road ahead of us, but at least we will not travel it alone, right?
Dane asked. Menodora's smile became all the brighter as she tackled him to the floor. It was ecstasy.
Wait! If we're this ultimate light, then how are we going to counteract darkness? There's only so much that we can do,
Menodora asked, holding herself up from the floor over Dane.
I have a plan to travel the world. We can be the beacon for others to look to. We can be there to help others. The world itself may be warped and dark, but by sharing our light and doing what we can to brighten every corner, even by the smallest amount, we can combat this darkness once and for all.
What about turning Margata's light outward? It may not be a lot, but it would still provide something.
That is something that will be much harder. For now, let us attempt our hypothesis outside Margata, where it may be better received.
Menodora grinned wide before hugging him once again. It felt like her heart would burst with all this joy she felt. The next weeks were a blur as preparations for the grand wedding were made. Bakers, tailors, mechanics, alchemists, and florists buzzed through the city, turning the once dreary, greasy square into a palace courtyard. People from all disciplines donated their talents. Most offered their help as thanks for the joy the couple brought to their dreary city. Dane made note that as the preparations for the wedding progressed, the inward light of the city felt as if it were slowly ebbing outward, spilling into the world and pushing back the darkness of the world lingering at the outer border. Those that had been shrouded in darkness for some time began to glow with their own light. When the day finally arrived, the very air seemed to shimmer like gold. Anticipation and bliss reverberated in everyone as the couple married in a service talked about for years to come. None was so grand as the marriage between Dane and Menodora Altur. Soon after, the two of them set off to share their light with the rest of the world, taking with them a heavily loaded horse-drawn wagon full of food, decorations, and small trinket gifts. Their first stop was a small village south of Arentia. Menodora could almost see the darkness permeating everyone in the town. Wasting no time, they began inviting all that they came across to a celebration that night, only to discover that the darkness didn't suspend itself as it had in Margata as people were invited. The two of them spent the day emptying their cart of its cargo, bringing life to the drab, sand-etched square. When the time for the celebration did come, it was anything but. Everyone was lethargic, dull, and uninterested. Dane and Menodora began asking different people about their lives, trying to ascertain why such a lively event would seem so dead.
Suppose there really isn't much to celebrate,
one farmer said.
Don't misunderstand me. I am thankful for this distraction. But when tomorrow comes, it'll all be nothing more than a distant memory.
What do you mean?
Dane asked, noting that the darkness hanging around this particular individual seemed as if it were forced on him, yet part of his life.
The new queen of Arentia has made our lives difficult. All of us have been taxed heavily with really no explanation. Because of that, it's getting harder and harder to just get by.
Dane and Menodora both looked to each other, feeling defeated and a little embarrassed that they would try and force upon these people happiness that would only fade once they were gone. This darkness was much more rooted than what existed in Margata.
Perhaps we should be able to speak to this queen on your behalf,
Menodora suggested, handing the farmer a glass of punch.
It won't work. Many people have gone to try and speak with her. Even traveling bishops have tried and failed. Some rumors say she's even killed some of them.
Dane sighed and set a hand on the man's shoulder.
Then she has not met us. We will speak to her on your behalf,
he said, noticing the area beginning to feel lighter but hesitant. Perhaps this reluctant feeling was another hue of light, hope for a new and better future tainted with past experiences of failure. When the small celebration was over, Dane and Menodora both left the next morning for Arentia, determined to help these people. As they trekked, the story would be repeated through every town they stopped in. More and more people were downtrodden and despondent, searching for some way to make their lives better. It was becoming clear that there would need to be a different approach to fixing the world of this darkness. The cure would not be one of distraction and celebration, but of reassurance and hope. And it would start by speaking with the Queen.
What are we doing wrong?
Dr. Long asked, combing over the data of their latest test. It had been almost a decade since the beginning of this project, yet they were no closer to solving the problem of the parts breaking down. Every time they would try and activate a component, something would fail, and they would have to start again, sometimes from scratch.
Even differing our approach to biomechanical, it still won't fully amalgamate,
Maxis added, looking over the data in more detail. There was just some force at work preventing that last little bit they needed. Adelia picked up one of the sheets, pointing to a line of numbers.
Perhaps the bonding polymer between the artificial tissue and the mechanical components is too viscous when it is introduced, vaporizing the tissue. Right here, it shows that there is a massive spike in temperature just before it becomes solid. No, that wouldn't work either.
She sighed, bringing out a pad of paper and writing out equations.
Making the polymer thinner would only increase the temperature spike, and making it thicker would lower the spike, but the reaction needs to be sustained for a longer period, and that could induce necrosis.
Maxis sighed. Being the master of metallurgy, he thought of and tested thousands of alloys that would be stable enough to meld with the artificial tissue, and he had found it, but...
It appears that we almost need to suspend or slow time for multiple reactions at once.
He sighed.
I could introduce some agents into the polymer that would slow the reactions, but it would weaken the final bond between flesh and metal.
Adelia answered, all of them sitting in silence for a long while, when a voice spoke behind them.
What if standard alchemy alone was not enough?
A man asked. Long and Maxis looked up to see a young man with long black hair draped over one of his eyes sitting at their table.
You're Russel, Madei's apprentice, are you not?
Maxis asked. The man looked up slightly, his hair falling away from his face and revealing a small mechanical brace on the side of his eye.
Yes, I am he.
Dr. Long set the datasheet aside and grabbed his chin in interest.
What do you mean, standard alchemy alone is not enough?
I couldn't help but listening, but it sounds as if you need to slow your reactions for binding the components. Is that right?
Dr. Long nodded, simultaneously interested and suspicious.
Then perhaps it is time to look beyond mere science. A man living in a city named Kritas is an expert with a form of alchemy that works outside of the natural laws of science, allowing for the construction of wonders beyond our imagination.
Maxis and Dr. Long looked to each other before Long answered.
What you suggest sounds like it dabbles in magic. We are men of science. How can fairy tales and misdirection help us?
Dr. Long asked with conviction. Russel smirked darkly.
I have been to Kritas, and I have seen firsthand the result of these fairy tales and misdirection, as you call them. It is real. It has allowed for even the creation of the enormous guardian golem called Hecatone. His art is known by a few names, but most prominently as dark alchemy. I believe that by using it, you can have what you seek.
Russel grinned. Maxis sighed, calling Dr. Long to a more private corner.
I don't think we should pursue this. I've seen where dark can lead by watching my son's research. If we do this, we could travel down a road with no return. We could become depraved lunatics, not men of science.
Dr. Long took a long breath and looked over his shoulder to Russel as he looked over the data left on the desk.
It is the nature of our research to investigate and pursue any leads that move science forward. I am the lead of this project and I hear your concerns, but we must move forward. If at any point you believe that we are beginning to cross a line, I want you to stop us.
Maxis thought long and hard about his responsibility. Even when Dr. Long had started this project, Maxis warned the entire group that they were stepping into dangerous territory reserved for gods. Toying with human life in such a way would open a Pandora's box of possibilities. But still they pressed on. How much farther was left until it was too late? Eventually, Maxis gave his consent, very unsure that using this dark alchemy was the answer they sought. He very much wanted to stop Dr. Long, but the man was so close to his goal that such concerns would only be heard and not heeded. With Maxis' agreement, they returned to the table.
This expert in dark alchemy, what is his name?
Dr. Long asked, gathering up the datasheets. Russel smiled, proud that he had brought something of interest to Margata.
His name is Arcarium.
When your fires all die out, all you know just turns to ash, and your life goes slipping, spinning into doubt. Sunshine trapped inside your heart, cold and lost and in the dark. Looking back on all this, nobody was there. Nothing left to lose. Gotta find the you that's hidden deep